Only after 2 iterations we realized the interface had to be absolutely frictionless. Drivers can't be scrolling through menus when they're pulled over. The core idea is a single tap to activate traffic stop mode, which instantly locks down the phone to just the essentials.
That makes sense. But how does the officer actually verify the information? Is it just a screen? Or is there a secure way to confirm the driver's identity on the spot?
The system would generate a temporary digital token. Think of it as a one-time passcode. The officer scans or enters that code into their own device, which then pulls up only the pre-approved details: license, registration, insurance, and any emergency info the driver has chosen to share. No more, no less.
Here's the takeaway. Both parties see exactly what's being shared, and nothing else. That transparency is critical, especially for building trust and ensuring legal compliance.
But what about the activity log? If something goes wrong, can the driver or officer prove what was accessed and when?
Yes, every interaction is logged in real time. Both the driver and the officer get a time-stamped record of what information was viewed, which could be crucial if there's ever a dispute or investigation.
That's the safeguard. Clear records, limited data, and a process that's designed to keep everyone focused on safety and accountability. Last week we got stuck on a side street for 15 minutes because a friend froze up during a traffic stop. She wasn't sure if she should reach for her registration or just keep her hands visible. This is the tension point, where we break down the real stakes behind everyday moments.
That hesitation is so common. According to a 2022 Pew survey, nearly 60% of drivers said they felt anxious about what to do with their hands or documents during a stop, especially at night or in unfamiliar neighborhoods.
But if officers could be certain about a driver's intentions, wouldn't that reduce the stress? I wonder if the confusion is mostly about unclear instructions, or if it's more about the unpredictability of each situation.
Here's the takeaway. Even the smallest misunderstanding, like moving too quickly or not responding right away, can escalate things fast. Both sides are operating with partial information, and neither wants to make the wrong move.
And it's not just nerves. Language barriers or hearing impairments can make it almost impossible for a driver to follow commands, but officers might interpret that as defiance or risk.
If that's true, then shouldn't there be a standardized protocol, maybe visual cues, or a universal script so everyone knows what to expect? Or is that unrealistic given how many variables there are on the road?
We'll dig into what both drivers and officers wish the other side understood, and what it would take to make these encounters safer and less confusing for everyone. Only after 2 iterations of the prototype did we realize how much confusion comes from drivers fumbling through their phones to find insurance or registration. The traffic stop mode single-purpose interface could cut that time in half, and that's a tangible safety improvement.
But how do we make sure the officer only sees what's necessary? If the app accidentally exposes unrelated documents, it defeats the whole privacy argument. Is there a technical safeguard for that?
The proposed system would use a permissions-based approach. Think of it like a digital envelope that only opens the exact files authorized for the stop. For example, the officer could verify your license status, but wouldn't see your recent call history or photos. That's a big leap from current practice, where a physical wallet might reveal much more.
Here's the takeaway. Limiting data access isn't just about privacy. It's about trust. If drivers know their information is compartmentalized, compliance rates could rise, and officers spend less time on the roadside.
I partly agree, but what about verification? If someone fakes the digital interface, how does the officer confirm authenticity without reverting to old methods?
That's where secure digital signatures come in. Each document would be cryptographically signed and time-stamped so the officer's device can instantly check if it's genuine. This is already standard in some mobile ID pilots, but scaling it for traffic stops would require cross-agency cooperation.
And the boundaries matter. This system can't override legal procedures or officer discretion. It's an extra layer, not a replacement. The challenge is making it seamless enough that both sides actually want to use it. Only after 2 iterations we realized that session-limited access wasn't enough. Users wanted to see exactly what data was touched, and by whom. in real time. That demand for transparency changed our entire approach to activity records.
That's interesting because according to a 2023 survey by the Digital Trust Institute, 68% of respondents said they'd only use a roadside system if they could verify every access event themselves. So, the technical solution has to match that expectation or adoption will stall.
But what happens if someone loses their device or if biometric authentication fails? If the system locks out a legitimate user, that's a real-world problem, especially in high-stress roadside situations. How do we balance airtight security with practical usability?
Here's the takeaway. Multi-factor confirmation is non-negotiable for sensitive actions, but fallback options like temporary PINs or secure officer override must be tightly controlled and logged. Otherwise, we risk opening new avenues for misuse.
And on the data minimization front, the benchmark is clear. Only the minimum required information should ever be exchanged. For example, if law enforcement just needs to confirm license validity, there's no reason to access unrelated personal data. Encryption alone isn't enough if the scope of access is too broad.
Still, can we really guarantee that officers or even the system itself won't overreach? If there's a technical failure, or if someone tries to bypass the safeguards, what recourse does the user have in the moment?
If trust is the goal, then users need clear, immediate recourse. Instant alerts for every access, the ability to challenge or flag suspicious activity, and a transparent audit trail that's accessible to both parties. Anything less, and the system risks losing legitimacy. Only after 2 iterations we realized that the officer's interface had to flag expired tokens instantly, or else the entire verification process slowed down under pressure.
That's crucial. According to a 2023 pilot in Nevada, officers shaved an average of 40 seconds off each stop when the system auto-flagged invalid credentials, but any lag led to confusion and fallback to manual checks.
But what happens if the device fails or the system can't connect? Wouldn't that risk undermining the officer's authority, especially if drivers start questioning the process?
Here's the takeaway. The fallback to physical credentials must be seamless, and officers need clear cues for when to switch technology should support, not dictate their judgment.
And minimizing distraction is non-negotiable. The interface should require no more than 2 taps for verification, with visual alerts for mismatches. Otherwise, officers lose situational awareness.
If agencies over-rely on digital tools, could that create blind spots? For example, what if a credential looks valid digitally but is forged in the back-end system?
That's why ongoing training and periodic audits are essential. Technology can streamline, but never replace professional skepticism and lawful authority. Only after 2 iterations, we realized that the interface needed to prompt users about accessibility preferences before any officer interaction. That shift changed the entire flow now. Drivers can flag needs like large text or voice instructions up front, which reduces confusion and stress during stops.
That's crucial, especially since nearly 1 in 20 adults in the US report some level of hearing difficulty. If the system doesn't accommodate that from the start, it risks leaving out thousands of people. But I wonder, how do we ensure officers actually respect those disclosures in real time?
Can we guarantee that consent is truly voluntary when the power imbalance is so stark? If a driver feels pressured to share sensitive information just to avoid escalation, isn't that a form of coercion?
Here's the takeaway. Optional disclosure must be paired with strict privacy safeguards. The system should let users customize what's shared, and officers should only see what's relevant for safety, not medical histories or unrelated details.
There's also the language barrier. About 8% of US households speak English less than very well. Screen reader compatibility and translation options aren't just nice to have, they're essential for compliance and trust.
If the technology doesn't adapt to diverse needs, it risks reinforcing existing inequities. But what happens if someone declines to disclose? Does the system default to standard procedures? Or is there a fallback to ensure safety for all parties?
Uncertain current specs don't clarify fallback protocols, but the principle stands. Accessibility features must be integral, not bolted on. That's how you build trust and prevent misuse. Last week, we got stuck on a border crossing where the scanner simply wouldn't recognize my digital ID and the fallback wasn't obvious. That moment made me realize how critical it is for systems to signal a clear alternative, otherwise, people freeze or panic.
That's a real risk. According to a 2023 survey from the European Digital Identity Pilot, nearly 18% of users reported confusion when their phone battery died and staff weren't sure how to revert to paper checks. It's not just about the tech, it's about training and signage.
Can you explain how fallback procedures can avoid suspicion? Sometimes when a device fails, staff treat it as a red flag, even if it's just a technical glitch. What would make the transition less intimidating?
Here's the takeaway. Fallback needs to be both visible and non-judgmental. If the system simply says, "Show your physical license," and the staff are trained to accept it without extra scrutiny, the process feels safe. Otherwise, people worry they'll be penalized for something outside their control.
One benchmark from Australia's digital driver license rollout, they mandated that every checkpoint display a sign stating, "Physical ID always accepted." That reduced complaints by 27% in the first quarter. It's a simple, predictable cue.
I partly agree, but what about edge cases like when someone's paper ID is expired or damaged? Should fallback protocols be more flexible, or does that introduce new risks?
Resilience means designing for those exceptions too. If the fallback is clear and inclusive, staff can verify verbally or check secondary records. The key is that no one should be penalized purely because the technology failed. Only after 2 rounds of field testing did we realize that expired licenses triggered unexpected lockouts for legitimate users. That's a perfect example of why edge cases can't be left to chance.
If we look at the numbers, over 15% of drivers in pilot programs encountered at least one access issue due to network outages or device failures. That's a significant barrier if we're talking about replacing physical documents.
But what happens if someone's phone dies during a traffic stop? Wouldn't that undermine the whole idea of digital accountability unless there's a reliable fallback?
Exactly. That's why human judgment is irreplaceable. Technology can support, but never fully replace, on-the-spot discretion by police or officials.
And from a compliance perspective, legal frameworks still lag behind. For instance, privacy experts warn that digital records could be overinterpreted as definitive proof, even when errors or tampering are possible.
So, if we rush adoption before these gaps are addressed, we risk overpromising and eroding trust. Wouldn't it be safer to run independent trials with real-world stakeholders first?
Here's the takeaway. Robust solutions demand rigorous, independent testing and clear fallback plans, especially for vulnerable users. Before scaling up, involve diverse stakeholders, clarify what technology can and cannot guarantee, and never sideline human oversight. Thanks for pushing this conversation forward. If you found value here, share this episode and keep the debate alive.